So I'm going to talk about three things that I think will be really useful, and then you can go home and you can say to your spouse or your cat or one of your kids, wow, you know, everyone's talking about operational domains. Because I think something that's happened over the last few years is everyone's talking about algorithms. And you know, the accountability of algorithms is going to become a really big part of the life of the lawyer. And all we're talking about with algorithms is the programming of code that we're going to allow to do certain things in an autonomous way. So an algorithm is just a very clever little program that has more code than just a calculation. It's actually going to perform a function. But where it gets really interesting for us lawyers is we aren't just interested in the algorithms. We are interested in the algorithms, but we're interested in two other things. The back end of the algorithm is what informed what it's going to do. Okay, now this is all the brainy stuff, and you can have more alcohol later, but you'll have to just stay with me. The back end of the algorithm and the data has two particular types of, I guess you'd call it a motivator or an action. It is like an action. One is data or code that is programmed by a human and there's no self-learning. And the other side is where you allow a little bit or a lot of self-learning. And the more self-learning there is, the more problematic the algorithm is. Anything that's going to be automated, whether it's weapons, vehicles, or contracts, as in blockchain-based smart contracts, is going to need a lot of consideration of whether the human is going to be in the loop. Now, the reason why this is really important for blockchain is because blockchain allows us to monitor exactly what's going on with the particular algorithm or program, and it allows us to see it. Now, we can do that in a number of ways, but probably the most obvious is just to have an app that's reporting its behavior to us, and then we can, if we're interested, we can have a look. So for example, I was at a demonstration last week that had me so excited I almost cried, where somebody had taken a little device from the city centre in Sydney and driven it to Hunters Hill for about 20 minutes, and three things were monitored on this device. Number one, its geolocation. Number two, the temperature while it was in the vehicle. And number three, the humidity. Now, I'm not going to steal Emma's thunder, but Emma's going to know these are really important questions. When was it on the move? How hot was it? And how much humidity was in the air? Matters a lot to a lot of people when we talk about food safety and when we talk about the safety of vaccines and health and even organs in motion. So when we think about all of that, we want to know, well, okay, that's generating data. Isn't that interesting? Well, yeah, it is. And that data is what generates the thing we all call the Internet of Things. But when we talk about the chain of things, we're talking about putting that data onto a blockchain so that we can keep an eye on it and we can verify that it's correct. Because there's a lot of people in the world who can make a lot of money from messing around with that. And as lawyers, we care about the truth of information. So, for example, the Made in Australia label in China is a hot commodity. And a lot of people don't even care whether it was made in Australia or not. I heard somebody at a dinner the other night say, could somebody please fix whether red wine was made in Australia or not, or I'll just keep buying my Grange from China, and guess what? It sort of tastes okay. And that's a really cynical thing to say, but actually there's a lot at stake there. How do you know that that red wine is even safe to drink? You might say it tastes okay, but it's not safe for our market, and it's not safe for our clients. So that's the back end. So what I'm trying to say about the back end is you get the data, how good is it? Is it verifiable? Can you prove it? What's the provenance of it? And is it completely programmatic, which means humans have 100% controlled what's going on with the algorithm, or are we going to allow a little bit of self-learning? Okay, and then the other end of it is the operational domain. So the operational domain, and this is really important, if you're a lawyer or if you advise clients in any way, the operational domain of an algorithm or any automated program is incredibly important because it determines how much we're willing to suffer risk or breach of trust. And the appetite for risk just moves. It is the most elastic thing in the world. Really, really good example. A lot of people will go, well, I think the appetite for risk is always really, really high when no one's going to die and we're not going to lose a whole lot of money. Now, how then would you explain Apollo 11? It makes no sense. The idea that you were going to send in 1969 all of those people up into, like 3 men, up into space and then get them to land on the moon and think you're bringing them back? Now, the fact that they came back is a miracle. It's extraordinary. But the appetite for the risk of the loss of that particular piece of machinery and the 3 lives was very high. And that's the space race. You know, that's a human adventure. That's a very different question to how you would advise your clients if we're talking about an M&A deal or whether or not they can trust a certain supply chain for their goods. So the operational domain, I think for people thinking about blockchain, I think you need to ask yourself, where's it being used? So let me give you a blockchain example, just to take it all back a bit. I'm going to give you 3 scenarios and I want you to tell me whether you're freaked out or whether it makes complete sense. Number 1, I want to send some money to Genevieve and I'm going to do the following. I'm going to send her my bank account details, my online PIN, and I'm going to tell her how much is in the bank account, but could she please only take $100 out because that's all I owe her. Or I'm going to use the app and I'm going to transfer it into her bank account. Now, one of those 2 is equally going to send Genevieve the $100. But is anybody freaked out about the fact that I'm not going to give her my PIN and my access to my bank account, even though I trust Genevieve 100%? Is everyone with me? So my sister, my clerk in chambers, yes, under duress, I will give them these details, but usually because I'm in Vancouver and one of the children has been arrested. And that did actually happen once, but we won't go there tonight. I probably could have done with some blockchain. Let me put it this way. He phoned me and I got a phone call and it was, I've only got 1% left on my phone. I'm about to run out of power. I think I've been arrested. Could you call me back? That's a true story. Anyway, so I want to send Genevieve the money. Now, here's another scenario. What if I wanted to send, let's say, Josh an email, and the reason why I want to send him the email is because he's waiting for a document from me. Am I going to send him that via an email or, and the document's quite confidential, it's about a client's advice in relation to something, or should I tweet it? Now, both of them are going to get that information to Josh. Josh, I've tweeted it. You know, the documents, all the information you need is in the tweet. Go for it. Or am I going to email it to him through an encrypted server? If you asked anyone 20 years ago what the internet was going to do, or say 30 years ago, oh my God, the internet is going to be so exciting. And you said, you'll be able to send money to people and really sensitive documents, and you'll be able to also register your land and everyone will know you own it. Everybody would have just gone, I don't understand, it's freaking me out, because, and this is where blockchain gets interesting, people think of these things as an amorphous, globby mass. They think of data, algorithms, AI, and blockchain and the internet as just this glob, this mass, but it's not. It's all about operational domains. And in blockchain, there's about 7. But I'm not going to go through the 7. All I wanted to do was be really, really clear that if you do want to send Genevieve the $100 or the sensitive document to Josh, or if you do want to let the world know that that land is yours and it's registered in your name, all of this is going to be done online. And it's not going backwards. We're not going to go, you know what, the internet isn't sort of working. We're all a little worried about the sensitivity, or we're worried about disclosure, hacks, fake news, sending the money to the wrong person, not getting it back. All of these problems exist. I just don't think anyone's rolling back the internet. So where we are at the moment is we've found something that can change the DNA of a thing that's actually, it just keeps bleeding. And we keep putting Band-Aids on it, but we've worked out how to actually fix the DNA so it'll stop bleeding. The thing is, it's quite complicated, you know, like when you actually look at the code and you read it. But let's be honest, I don't know why that light isn't on, but that one is. And I don't care. All I know is I can go and flick a switch and that one will go on and that one will go off and probably won't burn the place down. So with blockchain, it'll mature and it'll become something everyone's using once we are just using these really slick apps and everything becomes a little more secure. But the reason why I think people like lawyers in particular and advisors are taking such an interest in it is because it fundamentally changes the way that we are all going to be able to interact with each other And it's going to change the fact that there is going to be a bit of trust built into the systems that we're creating. Trust that is currently lacking and that we need, and no one else has solved it until we had the whole cryptographic proof that has now been built into blockchain networks. So you don't need to think about it as something that's going to solve, not every kind of blockchain network is going to solve every problem. It is an architecture that has to sit within apps to do certain things, and then there are trade-offs. So this is the sort of work we're doing with standards. We have to say to ourselves, if you want high volume micropayments on a blockchain network, you are going to have certain trade-offs, probably speed, because you've got to get a lot of volume, micropayments, but they're going to slow down. The Bitcoin blockchain network is very stodgy at the moment. It takes a long time to process those payments. It's still quicker than sending money internationally, and it's probably cheaper. You will have to pay some money, but it's quicker. I could probably send €100 to my cousin in Germany for in about 20 minutes, maybe 35 minutes, using Bitcoin as the medium of exchange. So that's a pretty amazing solution to a problem. But that's not the same as saying, well, blockchain's going to assist with the provenance of your cheese or the registration of land. So the two really exciting projects that have been launched recently in Australia, one is with the ASX and the other one is with the National Insurance Disability Scheme. So let's just go with the NDIS. How am I going for time, Josh? Do we know? Can I do this example?
A couple of minutes.
Thank you. So with the National Insurance Disability Scheme, there's a fantastic blockchain project happening. Now, all of us, if we have an income, that includes me, we're all getting taxed, and a little bit of our money is going to pay for people in our society who are disabled or who need some disability insurance, who want to make claims and who are entitled to it because we live in a sophisticated and caring society. I'm happy with that. I am not happy with that money being spent on certain other things. And that makes me sound like a terrible person, but if they say that the reason that they need to make the claim on the insurance scheme is because their back is out, I'm not going to be happy if I find out that they just bought a boat and that they're out in the backyard loading it onto the back of the Prado and, you know, winching it up and ready to go off for the day while I'm working. And that's human nature. So if you just say, well, the problem isn't that I don't want to give the money, I just want to make sure it's going where it's needed. And it's the same with philanthropy. It's the same with the work that the UN wants to do, solving the toilet problem. The toilet problem is huge, and I will finish with the toilet problem. But if you want to know where the money's going and you want to monitor it and you're happy to give to that scheme, then I think those who donate to it have a right to monitor and know that it's doing the thing it's supposed to do. And I would argue it's better used the way it's supposed to. So this idea about transparency starts to make sense. Now let me go back to operational domains. And the reason why I keep saying it is because if you don't think about the operational domain, none of it makes sense. There are times when I don't want what I have in my bank account known to anyone. But when I die, I want everyone to know, because I don't want anyone taking any of it and giving it to someone else. I want it to go exactly where I said it's to go. They're two different operational domains with the same bank account. One is while I'm alive, the other one's while I'm dead. But it's the same with a smart contract. Do I want to automate every single transaction that I'm going to make if the particular recipient has a constantly fluctuating amount that I owe them? Well, no, unless there's an algorithm monitoring what it is I should pay, and if it just can send me a little alert. Just like a set and forget to pay your electricity bill that says, in 3 weeks, you're going to have $200 deducted from your bank account. Well, actually, let's get real. This is Australia, $800 deducted from your bank account. And you're going to pay it, and you're going to get a discount because it's set and forget. Now, it changes every month, but that's because it's being electronically monitored. But I need to know that. Now, one of the interesting things, we're living in a time when everything's become centralised by organisations that know what the mechanisms are, and we don't get to see them. And let's be frank, that's why we're having a Royal Commission. Because and why the GFC occurred. Because there are these really large actors, really big, what's under the hood. They get to watch the processes. All we're doing is we're at the user end. And so blockchain, block by block, can enable this revealing of exactly what's going on with transactions. So at standards, what we're trying to do is two things. Number one, increase the reliability and the minimum standard of the way that blockchain technology is going to develop so that everyone can play. We want to make sure it's interoperable. You know, there's no point having the internet just for Melbourne. It actually works a lot better if it's the same internet in San Francisco. And basically it's the same with GPS. We want interoperability. So that's something we're trying to achieve at standards. But the other thing we're trying to do is bake into it some sustainable development goals and trying to say, well, wouldn't it be great if we could use blockchain for things like climate change? Toilets, finally. Last point, can I do this one? There are 3.2 billion people in the world who don't have access to toilets. If we want to give every single one of those people a toilet, it's going to cost a lot of money. And you just do it little community by community, shantytown by shantytown or city by city, but nobody's going to give to it. If you're not sure, it's going to be spent on that. And I think that that's the bigger question for philanthropy and blockchain, and the idea that you can monitor it, you can make it validate transactions, and you can give complex conditional logic to quite simple transactions in high volume or very complicated registration of assets in small quantities.